Hello, welcome. You're listening to We Watch Movies.
I'm Ava.
And I'm Jenna.
And we watch movies. So this week we've watched The Trial of the Chicago 7 on Netflix. First of all, just to get this out there, I cannot recommend this movie enough, just with the times that we're in right now and the topics that it covers. It's amazing and it's timely and it's great, and I think if you haven't watched it before watching this video, you should go check it out first so that we don't spoil anything for you.
Yes, I'm not telling you to stop watching our video, but you should totally stop watching our video to go watch the movie, but then come back and watch our video.
Absolutely, yeah, go watch that. Pause this video, go watch the movie, and then come back, and yeah, we could talk about it. So, now that you have all watched the movie, clearly, let's get into, what we thought. So, Jenna, what were your initial reactions?
I thought it was really, really good, and it was really, really relevant, and I just, I had a good time. It's not like a movie that's, feel good or, a party, but, I had a good time watching it in a way that I haven't had fun watching a movie in a while.
Yeah, it was timely, and it was, raw, I guess would be the term. And it was moving in, a way that, because personally, I don't cry frequently at movies, at least not when I'm supposed to cry. But this got me really close to crying at an appropriate time, and so I think that's a job well done right there.
Yeah, I generally don't cry when I watch movies or read books, and that's not any fault of the thing that I'm experiencing. It's just never something that happens to me, but I could definitely feel those emotions. So good job, movie.
So the whole time, there were so many things that just made me really, really mad. Not at the movie, but at just the fact that this is a true story.
Oh my god.
Judge Hoffman's behavior and that moment. Okay, so afterwards I researched the movie. I read an article that was determining what was real and what was inaccurate about the movie, and I was really, really hoping that seeing Bobby Seale get bound and gagged was fiction. But no. That was completely true.
Yes.
That actually happened, and that makes me so mad.
Yeah, I had seen a news showing about the movie and the history behind it, so I knew that was coming, and it just got me mad and just angry all over again because that's something that happened in a courtroom, and just the complete impropriety of the judge and the whole situation just is a lot to have to think about and realize that this is something that happened in the United States close to 50 years ago.
It's just the blatant denial of rights throughout the entire thing was just so disgusting and vile. The way that they were treating these people, specifically Bobby Seale, because the whole time he said, I do not have representation. He's no, yes you do, but he's no, I literally don't, and that's literally a right that every person has in America. They have the right to counsel, and just the fact that a judge could just so blatantly ignore that and get away with that is just so gross, and it makes it so it's moments like that in American history that make me just ugh, it's just so uncomfortable and upsetting. And I mean, obviously there are parts of every history that we want to get rid of and forget about, but just the fact that some of this stuff is still happening now is just so
Yeah, like the fact that, like, yes, history, like, when we're confronted with, like, moments like this where we see that this was obviously not okay at all and that this was just disgusting, and the fact that we still haven't used this moment in history to improve in some ways. Like, obviously things have changed and things are different, but they're also not different. And I think this movie it resonated so much, especially with where we are right now, in almost a way that's scary. Like, I went into this movie thinking, yes, I like history, so I'll probably enjoy this movie because it's history, but sometimes it was kind of hard to remember that it was history and that this wasn't something that happened as recently as 2 or 10 years ago.
like when everybody says history repeats itself, you always think, oh yeah, that's just a thing that people say, but it's like so true. Because if you look at what was happening with all of the protests recently and everything, and like the police tear gassing protesters who were being peaceful and everything, and then the protests turning into riots, and just the amount of brutality and everything, like those clips from the movie, they looked remarkably similar to what you might see on the news, and like right now, and it's just so insane how accurate it was.
And I had also never heard of the Chicago 7 and this specific incident before this movie came out. And I think that was also fairly interesting because I know that this time period was very tumultuous and there was a lot of protest and anger going on in the country. But you would think that a trial that in the beginning of the movie is described as like the biggest trial of this person's lifetime is something that I had never really heard of, is a little off-putting.
Yeah, I feel like there's just things in history that, which is why movies like this are so important, that just moments in our history that get glossed over so grossly, and we have to look to people who aren't like people outside of politics, everything, like the artists in our world, the people who are writing movies, or the people who are making art or writing books and everything. They're the people who need to bring it to light, because frequently there are people in our political system who are just not going to bring up stuff like this. And so it's great to have an outlet like film where people can show off like moments in our history, like these 7 people who were protesting what they believe in, and like, you know, basic rights and everything, and then how horribly the American justice system treated them. And you know, that's why movies like this are so important, especially right now with everything that's been going on. It's crazy how important all this stuff is.
Yeah, I think it's very important to look at the past and use it as a tool for the future, and just staying aware of everything, because of course it's important to stay updated with things that are going on around you as they're happening. But if you can't look at events as a sign of growth or how to inspire growth and change, then previous events are kind of just rendered useless, and you don't have a reckoning, and there's this buildup that just never finishes, and you're working towards something that will never happen.
Yeah, and then especially with this movie, something that struck me was just how well it was done. Because, like I said, I was looking at what was the inaccuracies, and there really weren't that many. I mean, there were definitely some dramatizations, but you're going to get that in any Hollywood production. But it wasn't like the entire thing was a fabrication or just like inspired by true events. Like, it was very similar to what actually happened, which I really appreciated.
Me too.
But beyond just the historical significance of these events. Just there were some amazing performances and some great like writing and everything. Like, okay, so Eddie Redmayne, he played Tom Hayden. He has been in stuff like he was in Les Mis, he was in Fantastic Beasts. He was also in The Danish Girl, which is a really interesting movie. And I think that he did a really great job as Tom Hayden. It's like a whole he made it his whole like his own like character, his own person, but he still did justice to the historical significance of this person, you know?
Yeah, no, I thought that his performance was really well done, and like I would always notice that like whenever he was in the background, it always looked like he was still in character. Not saying that like no one wasn't in character when the camera like wasn't focused on them directly, but I could just like really tell that like he was still trying to be in character, if that makes sense.
So yeah, and while we're appreciating the cast, we have I'm gonna butcher this name. I'm sorry. Sacha Baron Cohen, who is Abby Hoffman, then Eddie Redmayne, who is Tom Hayden. Another name I'm gonna butcher. Yahya Abdul Mateen II, who is Bobby Seale. I'm so sorry, that was really bad pronunciation. Jeremy Strong, who is Jerry Rubin. Alex Sharp, who is Rennie Davis. John Carroll Lynch, who is David Dellinger. Noah Robbins, who is Lee Weiner, and Daniel Flaherty, who is John Froines. And so that was the cast of the Chicago 7. And we didn't really get much from Lee Weiner and John Froines, but the main 5 of them plus Bobby Seale, I think they all did a phenomenal job, and they really brought their own character dynamics, which were pretty great.
And also, I'm pretty sure the name is Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Yeah, he was Schultz, Richard Schultz.
Yeah, I thought he did a good job too. Like, he wasn't as involved as he wasn't a part of the Chicago 7. He was the lawyer arguing against them, but I still thought he did a good job in the scenes that he was in, and it made for like an interesting type of foil, because you have this kind of like large, very different group of people, and then you have him on like the complete opposite side, but you're also invested in this like internal like, well, what does he really think about what he's prosecuting?
Yeah, like the whole time I was looking at him, I was like, I can't tell if I should hate him or not.
Yeah.
Because I know there was that one part where he was like, oh, I side with the Republicans or whatever, but they weren't really like, they never really specified where he stands on the protesters. Because he like, at first he said that there wasn't really a good case to make against them, and he was against prosecuting against them. But then obviously he did it because it was his job, and so it was difficult to really figure out where that character stood in terms of the good and evil spectrum, which I think is great when you have an antagonist who you can't really tell if he's supposed to be an antagonist or not.
Yeah, it just made him like so much more of a dynamic character to watch that I was really happy about, because like obviously like if they had just dramatized it more and maybe like made it like more one-sided that he was completely against them, like it just wouldn't have been as interesting, I don't think, because we already had like Judge Hoffman being stupid. So sorry, only word I could think of to describe that. So it just made for a more interesting foe to our protagonists.
Oh yeah, and taking a moment to appreciate Frank Langella's performance as Julius Hoffman as the most hateable person I have seen in a movie in a very long time.
Oh man.
I mean, I like to think that when actors have to play incredibly disgusting human beings, that they find it uncomfortable or something, or maybe they find it really fun to be something that's very not like them. But if I like to think that it upsets them as much as it upsets the audience, but they do it because they have to.
Yeah, like I don't act in any capacity like at all. Like whenever there's any sort of like skit anyone has to do or like a play, I'm like, get me as far away from that as possible. But I'm always like really wondered like what people have to do when they have to act in a way that's like so contrary to like something they believe in or just like general being a good person. And like if you spend so much time in that character, is it ever like worrisome if you like forget that like you are not that person, and if you ever like retain some of that after your performance? Like, so I don't know, I always have respect for people who can do that and then kind of just move on with their lives.
I know there's like some crazy examples of characters getting really into their, or actors getting really into their characters, specifically with like several Joker actors. That's the most notable. I know specifically. Oh my god. Okay. What was his name? The Joker, the actor who played the Joker in Suicide Squad.
Leto.
Yeah, Jared Leto. So he was like sending his castmates like dead rats and things, and like rotting things, and he would do stuff like that, and he would be in character the whole time. And then and I know there were like, I'm pretty sure there was another Joker who did something crazy, like locked himself in a
Heath Ledger.
Hotel room. Yeah, Heath Ledger. He locked himself in a hotel room for like a really long time to get into character, and that's always, see. Personally, I've been in a couple of plays, but I've never been like in a movie, obviously. And I've played a couple of like, I've played a couple of quote unquote villains, but never like somebody just wicked and vile and like evil. I've never actually had to do that before. Which I feel like in the capacity of a play it could be fun. But like if you're getting so into a character, that could be kind of scary. I think if you're changing your own person to become somebody, like that's a great commitment, amazing performance, like wow. But then I feel like it would be kind of scary to like lose yourself like that.
Yay, good acting.
Oh, and then let's also appreciate Ben Shankman and Mark Rylance, who were Leonard Weinglass and William Kunstler respectively. I think particularly Kunstler, he was fantastic. I loved rooting for him.
Oh my gosh, yeah, and like this is a legal drama, so like I know that like legal anything can be boring, but like this movie was like actually like dynamic, and I was invested in rooting for different people, and I was like, yeah, get him at multiple times of the film, which you wouldn't think would happen, and I didn't expect that. But this movie was just so good, I got so invested in it.
Oh yeah, when I saw the title, I didn't think that it was going to be 2 hours and 10 minutes of a trial. I thought it was going to be like the events and then the trial. And I think they did a really good job of making a story out of several months of a trial. Like I think that was great, because then they used flashbacks to their advantage, and they used like interludes as well, and I think they did a great job at keeping us engaged, because I feel like if you were actually in the trial, even though it was history, like if you were just sitting there, it'd still be boring because it's a trial and legal stuff is boring.
Like, yeah, like obviously like trials aren't formulated like in that way. This was a long period of time condensed into a short 2 hours, and it showed like the highlights and the big important stuff to have an arc, but still, like, there are definitely movies out there that don't do a good job of that and do not make it interesting. Like, this is a movie I would rewatch.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm definitely gonna rewatch this someday. There's also, okay, wait, who is that? There was Michael Keaton as Ramsay Clark. So the whole Ramsay Clark thing, there was a lot of that was fake. That didn't not exactly fake. I mean, they did call him as a witness, and they did keep the jury out, but it wasn't like he was the end all be all of their argument. And also, David Dellinger didn't punch that guy in that scenario. Which, like, so they really dramatized this Ramsay Clark's character. But, like, I don't know how necessary that was. I mean, I know they needed, like, to make the other side look worse. Like, oh, they won't even let them have their fair argument. Like, they have this great witness and they can't use it. But I don't know how necessary it was to, like, make it this big thing. I mean, it was really interesting and wild when I was first watching it. But now that I found out that it's not, like, that's not exactly how it went down, that was kind of disappointing.
It did keep, like, the tempo of the movie up, which is definitely something to consider. Like, if they had maybe kept it more historically accurate, it might not have had, like, the same energy, because that was, like, a really, like, tense moment, because in the back of your mind you're thinking, is he gonna let the jury come in, even though, like, it was kind of obvious that he wasn't, because, I mean, this is Judge Hoffman we're talking about. But it was just interesting to watch, and, like, I was invested in, like, I don't know why they had Dellinger punch that guy if that wasn't really historically accurate, because they didn't really do anything with that. That was like, it happened and no one talked about it again, which frustrated me.
Yeah, I mean, they started out with Dellinger's pacifism thing, but, like, I know that they had to give him, like, a reason for him not to be the speaker at the end, because also he's apparently the one who read off the names at the end and not Hayden.
That would make
and
sense.
And they wanted to, like, I feel like they probably did that because they wanted to be like, oh, look, this pacifist is driven so far into punching another person. But, like, they just decided to, I think it was partially because they wanted Hayden to give the final speech, and so he needed to be the most respectful.
Well, like, I wouldn't have, like, questioned it, because, like, Hayden also just had a larger presence in the movie, so that didn't really make any sense to me.
Oh, yeah. Also, okay, this is kind of on a different topic, or back to the other topic of Ramsay Clark. The whole time he was on trial, or not when he was on trial, when they went to go get him to be a witness. So he was in so Michael Keaton, who plays Ramsay Clark, was in Spider-Man: Homecoming, and that whole scene when they were in his house really reminded me of, do you know the car scene?
Oh my god.
And where he's, like, threatening Spider-Man with a gun.
Yeah.
That was the whole time. And then immediately just my brain went to Spider-Man for that entire scene.
You see, in the back of my mind, I couldn't tell if it was Michael Keaton. I was like, is this McDonald's guy? Because he was in the Founder. And my brain also does think of him as the Spider-Man guy too, but, like, for whatever reason, I was just like, it's the McDonald's guy, right? Like, it has to be.
He was also Beetlejuice, which I didn't realize until, like, 2 seconds ago. I didn't know that he was Beetlejuice.
I haven't seen Beetlejuice.
You haven't seen Beetlejuice?
No, or Nightmare Before Christmas. I know. I'm a failure for a movie podcast co-host. I'm aware.
Okay, well, you have some homework.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, I mean, I guess maybe that's, like, what he's good at, is just, like, being tense. And, like, building suspense and stuff. But I think it was effective. Just like the car scene. Both scenes were effective. Which was pretty cool. Oh, then there was that one little, like, part with that guy from Gotham. Do you remember?
My head is just doing, like, the 3 dots in text messages right now. I'm working on it.
Okay. When Schultz was first given the case, when he was talking to that guy before the trial even started, John Mitchell, do you remember that scene?
Oh, in the beginning?
Yeah. So that was John Doman, who I'm pretty sure is Falcone in Gotham.
Oh, that's a while back in my mind. I'm gonna believe you.
So that was cool. I was like this entire time I was watching the movie, I was just like, every time somebody that I recognized popped up, I was like, oh my god, it's that person. And it was like 9:30 and I was watching this. I'm like, oh my god, it's that person. Particularly because Abby and Tom were played by two people from Les Mis, which is also a great movie. If you haven't seen Les Mis, it's great.
I have not.
Homework, Jenna. Homework. Okay, so what else? Oh, there was so Fred Hampton, you know, the guy who was sitting behind Bobby Seale the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
In the record, there's not really any mention of him sitting behind Bobby Seale and talking to him and everything, so that was probably also exaggerated. But I think it was really I think it was very useful because their dynamic with Bobby Seale and everything, it was that whole plot with Bobby Seale and the injustice in the court, specifically at him, because it was really important, because also historically it was very racially driven, the court's motivations for putting him in the case and everything, and he was historically mischarged and then split off from the case. But then he did receive the longest sentencing because of all of his contempt of court.
Oh dear.
Which, it was just, this whole thing was so upsetting because he was just saying, my lawyer isn't here.
Exactly.
I don't have a lawyer. And then the judge was like, you have a lawyer right there. And he was like, no, I don't. That's not my lawyer. And he's like, okay, I don't care. And then, I mean, historically, he also did say that he wanted to represent himself, but he was also like, that was kind of ignored, which is like, you know, it was like, just the fact that his basic rights were so blatantly denied is just so upsetting, because like, that's the whole, throughout American history, there's just been so much denying of basic rights to the black people of America, and it's just so upsetting. And even now, with everything that's going on, it's more important than ever for people to talk about this stuff, you know?
Yeah, I agree. I think you put it into words nicer than I could. It's incredibly important, and I think while this story is really good and it does shine a light on that, I think it's also important to have stories that also have an even stronger focus on those narratives and those issues and instances in history that aren't also tied to the events of other white people as well, because this is obviously incredibly important to learn about, and this is something that shouldn't be ignored. But I think hopefully a door will be opened to more movies with other stories as well.
I think there was a movie that came out in August, I think, that I wanted to see, but I didn't end up getting the chance to, because of because we were trying to be cautious about going to actual movie theaters, and it's not on Netflix, which I think was also of a similar kind of plot. I don't remember the title at the moment, but I need to figure out a way to see that movie because I really wanted to. But it was you know, it was a predominantly black cast, and it was a story. it was a story.
Wow, that really narrows it down, Ava. I'm so glad we could get that out of the way.
But you know, I've been seeing more movies coming out about this, and I'm just it's exciting me, and it's making me so happy that there's more representation and more stories like this, because we have had so many stories about, you know, white people doing white things. And I think more than ever right now we need stuff like that, and those are the stories that need to be told and talked about. And I think it's fantastic that we're getting this type of material in film right now.
Yeah, like the only stories we should be getting from Hollywood should not be straight, white, able-bodied, cisgender people. We need other representation. I don't think I said that in a very coherent way, but hopefully my message comes across. Like, we need representation of everyone's stories and experiences, because other people exist and they have experiences that not only deserve to be heard, but they also just have so much to bring to film and art that should not be ignored, and we should allow them to express themselves in their creativity and their ideas.
I mean, I think it's really sad that the only time that we get stories like this told are from. I mean, it's not sad that we're getting them told from artists, but I think that it's really sad that, you know, the people in political positions, or well, I guess political positions is the most predominant, but they're really not taking as much time as they should be just to appreciate all these stories and this history. Like, right now it should be in a lot of people's minds that things like this have happened and things like this are still happening. And, you know, that's what all the protests were about and everything. They were like, hello, you guys are grossly forgetting about these basic human rights and equality and everything. And then people are just like, oh, whatever. And it's just really sad.
Yeah, like, this is nothing new, but I think a lot of people may mistake the fact that because they've never heard of it, it's something that never happened before, when before we just were not getting the same amount of coverage or representation in anything. That these are long-standing issues with deep roots that go back farther than most people realize, that are complex and can't just be solved easily. And by shedding more light on them through art, more people become aware, and it starts a conversation that doesn't necessarily have to be over the table because of the news, and it can just be focused. And also, like what we're doing, we're not only talking about the topic, we're also talking about the movie itself, because it's something we enjoy, and it doesn't have to be a complete downer of a conversation like maybe you would if you had just watched the news right now.
Yeah, and I mean, hats off to Aaron Sorkin. I mean, he directed and wrote this movie, and I think he just did a brilliant job of taking advantage of the times and, you know, American history and everything, and putting it all together and being great. And so he made this thing that was moving and important, and it was funny. There were parts that were really funny too. Like Abby and Jerry Rubin, like they were specifically really funny in some parts. And I think that, so you remember, because last week we talked about a movie that was supposed to be a comedy.
Exactly.
And it was not funny at all. But then there's these two guys who were doing like stand-up and everything in this movie who were really funny. And then they were also just funny in general. But I think their most successful jokes were the ones where they were talking about things of substance, you know? And especially now that I've noticed in our generation, we take issues that are happening right now, like really heavy topics, and we deal with them through humor, which I think is it's really, I think that's a very human thing to do, to deal with the problems of our world by making jokes. But specifically now, especially with like TikTok and so many young people, like Gen Z people, our humor is very centered around current events and everything, and we're making light of it but still taking it seriously. And I think that's like a sort of universal thing with humor, and I think those are the most successful.
Yeah, like meme culture has become kind of like a sort of, I don't want to say therapy, but it's kind of become like a therapeutic thing for people to like go on the internet and see that someone else also noticed this thing, and it's just become like kind of a source of communication for people. Like I know that I have like a couple pictures on my phone that I use, so like something happens to me, I can like go to one of those pictures and like make a meme about it and send it to someone. And it, for me, it kind of like takes the negativity out of what happened and helps me like figure it out and process my own emotions, and then at the end of the day I have a funny meme that will make someone else laugh. So haha, jokes on you, bad things.
Yeah, like I mean, there's through every generation there's always like that difference between humor. It's like, oh my gosh, boomer humor, or oh my gosh, kids these days and stuff. And there's always going to be differences, and people are always going to not like the other generation's humor, or people are always going to not like the other generation, like, let's face it. But it's interesting to see how some humor is just universal, because then you have these people who are just like, they're using their humor and they're using their platform to talk about things that need to be spoken about, but they're still doing it in a way that's funny and entertaining. And I think that was really cool to see.
And like this movie kind of harnessed that because it told the stories of everything that was happening in different ways. Like the courtroom was always like the big focus, but as it got to some of the events of the night of like the riot and the Democratic convention, it also used a event that one of the 7 did at like a college as like stand up in a way. And suddenly you would have all these different moments in the movie telling the story, and they each had their own distinct way of doing so. And through the stand-up portion of that telling, it helped because you have the trial, which could be kind of down, and then you have the actual events, which are insert whatever you want to describe the things that happen. But then you also have this acting as a different tone that gave the movie a different energy and put it into a different light, I guess.
Yeah, and then there was like just parts of the characters themselves, like the ways that that one FBI agent who was like seducing Ruben. I think that was really funny. And I know it was also like really depressing and upsetting, but it was also funny, like his reactions and everything. So they did a lot of that with humor. And then there was also the part where they came dressed up like the judge and like police. They did that with humor. That was fun. But also, like you were saying, the timeline of this movie was also really well done, and it kept the pace moving.
Yeah, it was wild. And like this movie, for a historical legal drama, had such good energy. Like the introduction to this movie, like introduces all of these different people and all these different ideas in like less than 5 minutes, and it just did such a good job of that. Like I was watching it and I was like, wow, like I'm already like super intrigued and like this is exciting, and I just got sucked into the movie right away, and that didn't really change. It just kept everything moving along. The pace was good. I was always invested in the characters and the events. And while it didn't have like, there are some historical movies, like this isn't a movie, but like for example, like Hamilton, like it completely takes a historical event or life in that instance and like really reworks it to give it a different sort of energy and like whatever you want to call it. And this movie, it kind of did the same thing while also keeping it more rooted in reality and historical accuracy.
Yeah, also there was so it also kind of reminded me of I bet you have you seen Chicago, the movie? of the
I don't
play.
think so. No.
So Chicago is a musical, and the movie adaptation of it, there's this character Billy Flynn, because it's about these women who committed murder, and this one lawyer who's really good at getting them a not guilty sentence. And it takes place in Chicago in like the 20s or something. And Billy Flynn, so when he finally approaches, or when the trial finally starts in the last part of the story, they said, and here's Billy Flynn with a tap dance. And then basically the whole sequence is him winning over the jury and everything, but it's also kind of like a dance. And I think that was very similar in energy, but like to this movie, but this movie did it for like the entire 2 hours, which I think was really, really great.
And it's not exhausting either. Like, I just want to put that out there. Like, you don't get fatigued or like burnt out, and it's like, okay, well, can we just like take a moment and like you not do what you're doing? Like, it's fun and it works for the movie. So I remember during the hill scene, that was a lot, but my brain kind of started focusing on the music, which was probably not the thing I should have been doing during that scene, which is like such a huge like climactic moment. But in that moment I was like, wow, this is some good music. And first of all, I was surprised for a movie that took place during like the protests to the Vietnam War. It didn't use a lot of like protest music from that era, which a lot of movies do. Like, this movie pretty much had like an all original score that I know of. And again, like, the score added to a lot of the moments, and it had like the same kind of energy that the film did, and I thought that worked really well to its advantage. Like, it really got me like into the moment, unless I was being weird and I was just thinking about the music, which it was good music that helped the film, and it was original enough because I think if the film had done anything different, I would have liked it less.
Yeah, and so I know that scene was also dramatized a lot. I'm pretty sure how it went down was they were the hill was unguarded, and they took the hill, and there were people climbing the statue, and then the police came. But I think what they did was still really it didn't do an injustice to the moment. Like, there were still people getting like beat up and everything. I'm pretty sure there was definitely somebody who broke their leg or something when they were being pulled off of a statue. And so all of that, I think that scene was really effective, and it wasn't like a gross exaggeration of the moment. And then there was also the whole if blood will flow, let it flow all over the city. That was kind of that whole like he was like, oh, I meant to say our. That moment did give me kind of a moment, you know?
Like that's a pretty big mistake to make, man. Like, and that's not even like a slip of the tongue in the moment. That's something that you just do. Like, everyone is listening to this podcast and they've heard me talk, and you have probably figured out that I'm not the best public speaker. But like, I think I would be aware enough of what I was saying to make sure I did not make a blunder like that. Maybe, I don't know, emotions were flying high during that moment, but you would think at some point you would course correct. So that was like probably the biggest stretch of the movie that felt a little not working.
Yeah, and then they had like that whole I think it was kind of drawn out scene where Abby was like, "You're really bad at using personal possessive pronouns."
Like, wow, really?
Like thank you for that very specific statement. That was great. But I feel like in that scenario, if you're like, if blood is going to flow, you would probably go back and correct yourself. You'd be like, if our blood is going to flow or something, you know?
You said it,
you wouldn't just like.
You would think, like, you would hear it and be like, oh, wait a minute.
Like, low-key, I'm pretty sure Hayden was trying to dig himself out of a hole on that one. But that quote is not on record. I don't think it's on record as, like, actually a thing. So, like, where exactly does it say it? Yeah, so, it's like, I'm pretty sure that quote is not actually in the real trial. It wasn't on record. So I don't know if that actually happened. I'm not sure how true that is. I don't know where they got that from. But like, I feel like that's a pretty bold statement to get away from. To be like, oh no, I wasn't egging them on. Like, dude, that's a little bit. That's pushing it a little bit far.
Like, I did like that scene overall, even with that happening, because I thought it was a good way to, like, finally, like, introduce, like, what happened that night and why, or at least what the movie is saying how it happened. So I did like that, but I would have preferred if they had, like, focused a little bit on, like, that and, like, maybe made it work a little bit better for the film, because they introduced that and then you never hear about it again. Like, Hayden doesn't end up on the stand, it's someone else, and again, nothing is ever really said about it.
Because I know they bring it up during Abby's testimony, and that he doesn't really correct him. He doesn't say, oh, Hayden meant to say this. But, like, I don't have any problem with Hayden saying that. I mean, I feel like, honestly, if you're gonna protest, like, be strong, like, go for it. But if you're gonna say something like that, like, own it. Mm-hmm. You know? It's kind of like a... Because that's a power move right there. And I think this... I mean, like, if Abby said that, he would own it. And I don't think that... Obviously, I know that he was like, I don't want to egg people on, I don't want to hurt anybody, but if I watched my best friend get brutally clubbed in the head, like, the way that they showed that I don't know if that was dramatized, but that was horrific. If that happened to my best friend, I don't know what I would say. I would probably say some pretty messed up things, too. And I would be like, yeah, I said that because in the moment... my friend was being brutalized by police, like his head was spurting blood, and I'm sorry, but I think that was kind of a justified response.
Yeah, I would not have been calm in that moment, I don't think.
Like, I feel like... So... lawyers, particularly as far as I've seen them in movies and stuff, I haven't actually been to a real trial, but so somebody will get really mad, or somebody will do something really bad, and then they'll say something like, "Oh, I'm gonna kill you," and then, like, the lawyer would be like, "You told them that you were gonna kill them, and now they're dead," and then they're like, "Dude, that's an expression," or like, I was really mad, yeah, but I didn't kill them. And I think this was probably one of those moments where it's like, he was really mad in the moment, and it just kind of slipped out.
Yeah, because I feel like throughout the whole movie, he was, like, one of the protesters who really didn't want any of like, the rioting to happen at all. Like, none of them did, but, like, he was very much a proponent of, like, keeping everything calm and, like, doing what they came there to do and nothing else. So I think it was one of those moments that you were describing.
And then there was the moment of Hayden standing when everybody else was sitting, which I get that it was a reflex, but also like his friend showed him the note and he nodded and he like acknowledged it. I feel like personally, if I were to be in that scenario, I'm pretty sure I would like get kind of out of my seat and then realize, because I think things like that have happened probably in like church or something when there's like all those times that you have to stand up and sit down. If I ever like am like standing up at the wrong time or something, I usually catch myself like in the process, and then he like stood up and he was just like really awkward. He was like, oopsies. That was a very uncomfortable scene, but it was also kind of funny. And I know it wasn't supposed to be funny. but it
I
kind of
also
was.
liked how later on when he went to Keaton's house and the maid or whatever was there and she asked him, why were you the only one who stood? I liked how they actually referred to something that happened earlier in the movie, because that was like my one thing that I didn't like. Sometimes it felt like they just brushed things under the rug once they were over.
Yeah. Which, like, I understand kind of why that happened in some scenarios, because it was spanning over, like, months and months. So it does kind of make sense why some things were brushed under the rug. But I really liked in that scene where she was like, why were you the one who stood up after they, like, gagged, Bobby Seale? And then he was like, oh, it was a reflex. And then the way she looked at him, she was like, yeah, I believe you, totally. And it was, I don't know, that was amusing to me. But I do think, I know that technically it wasn't him who read off the names at the end, but I think it was really effective for his character. And that entire sequence when they were reading the names off at the end, that was like a whole like yes moment. Like you were just watching and you were like, oh yeah, like yes, amazing, I love. And so that was like the most emotional. This was like the emotional climax, I think, of the movie. And it was just, I think that was so effective and really just, and I know that, and the fact that that's real too is just amazing. And I love that they did that. I don't know if in real life they got through.
I doubt they did.
4,000 names. But I kind of wish that they did.
Yeah, and I remember I got to the beginning of that scene and I was like, okay, like, I know the movie's about to end, but it doesn't really feel like an ending. Like, is it just gonna, like, end and I'm just gonna be sitting here, like, a little unsatisfied, even though that's history? Like, I can live with an ending like that. And then, like, he started reading the names and I was like, yes, this is the ending I wanted this movie to go out on. And they did a good job of, like, constantly referencing the names without giving away why. Like, they did the thing with, like, oh, wait, guys, we have to stop talking for a moment and watch the last of the names go down on the TV. And, like, I think it was Rennie who kept bringing up all of the different names on the days when he was writing them down. And so, again, I really liked how it had that kind of cohesion and it all came together in the end for one last hurrah before it just ended, and it was a good ending.
I was kind of at the when I started seeing like the words, or not the words, the where are they now script, it was kind of, at first I was like, oh, that's really depressing, like they all went to jail and then like a bunch of them died. But I mean, that, I feel like those are always kind of depressing. Like every time I watch a movie with those, there's always like some sort of depressing kicker that they didn't want to put in the movie because it would have just been too depressing.
Because it's a really bittersweet thing, because first of all, in your mind, you've kind of like built this up because it's a movie, so you kind of have a suspension of reality. You're like, wow, this is like a good story and I like all of these characters. So then when you see that crawl, you're reminded that this is real, this has happened. Some of these people are still alive, maybe. And I think also it's just a bittersweet thing because you're ending with all of these emotions and you're like, yes, look at them go. And then you're reminded that they went to jail, like they died not super soon after, but like some of them didn't live until the 2000s. And it's kind of just this reminder that pulls you back into reality, and then the movie goes on for like 10 more seconds with like one last jab, and then it ends and you're left with the remains of the movie.
Overall, I think that the ending was really effective. And also, if you could just hear my dog, apologies. I don't know why she's barking. But I think this is a good wrap up. I think you put it really well. And so once again, to anybody who may be listening right now, if you have recommendations for movies that you think we should watch or talk about next week, definitely let us know.
Yeah, I got a whole personalized list of recommendations from someone today. So if no new movies come out, we might have to resort to that. So I don't know. I think our viewers have some stiff competition.
Ooh, okay. Well, anyway, guys, if you made it this far, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. You're the best. And yeah, so thank you for watching. We'll see you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye!